What's up everyone, I'm Twisted. I'm recording this on the 16th of November. Act 2 of Season 2 of Arcane came out today. I watched it all, it was amazing, it was so good. The first act already surpassed my expectations and I think this new one goes even further beyond that, which is really exciting. There's a lot to talk about. Like last time, I'm going to rewatch all 3 episodes and I'm gonna pause at certain points to explain and show some details that I managed to notice. And this episode starts out with this style very similar to the one from the funeral of Caitlyn's mother, and this is here to establish a time skip. We are going to see that Caitlyn and Ambessa have taken control of the Undercity, which I think confirms that Caitlyn was able to apprehend all of the Camp Barons. We saw that in the montage of episode 2, I believe, where we see the 2 Camp Barons that were still alive getting caught in Caitlyn's net. So I think it's safe to assume that they are out of the picture since they don't return in this act. And we can see here something we saw in the trailers, which is that the Piltovans are creating these walls within the Undercity to keep track of everyone that passes through them, obviously to keep control of the people. Here are some of the background characters from Act 1, and notice that now all the enforcers have this new symbol. And here we see a doll made in the image of Jinx. Obviously, Jinx is becoming a symbol for the Undercity. We will see that in this episode, so this makes sense. Speaking of which, as I was just saying, we now have this new faction in Zone, which is themed around Jinx, and I assume that these people know that Jinx was the one that caused the paint explosion in the upper city, and that was what turned Jinx from Silku's henchman to the symbol of hope to the Undercity. And if I'm not mistaken, later we get a name for this faction. They are the Jinxers, so no relation to the Inks from the Convergence game. And here I believe this is the guy that is going to get caught on one of the walls later. And here we get the source of all this police brutality. Obviously Ambessa and Caitlyn, with Ambessa manipulating Caitlyn to some extent, but Caitlyn is not dumb, she's aware of this, and I believe we'll get a taste of that in the teaser for the next act. And here we see Ambessa interrogating one of the Zonites. Interrogation is something that is going to come up again in this act. And here I really like this shot of Caitlyn getting overwhelmed with the word blue. Obviously one of Caitlyn's main goals is to find Jinx, so it's very poetic that now there's this faction that is emerging in the Undercity who sees Jinx as a hero or as a symbol of their liberation, right? Very poetic. And here we see what Caitlyn is looking at. It's a map full of clues leading up to Jinx. And every single one is leading up to Jinx's eye, which makes me wonder if this is foreshadowing something. And here we see all these blue lines around Caitlyn, which are obviously parallels to the strings on her board of clues. And here we get the mural that we saw on the trailers, and now we know that it was Isha, I believe her name, the one that was painting them. And this is relevant because, as we'll see, Isha was the one that believed in the cause and in Jinx even before she herself did. Unfortunately, Netflix does not let me watch the intro. Every time I try to watch it, it just skips it. So if you know how to fix this, let me know down below. But I do know now, after watching other content creators, that there are a couple differences between the intros of each episode, and those differences are hidden frames from the show hidden inside the intro. In my last video I showed that one with Ambessa's mask, that's one of them, but each episode has different ones. Again, I can't really look for them because Netflix doesn't allow me, so we'll just move on from that. And I don't have anything major to say here besides the fact that this was really unexpected. I've seen some theories online that Maddie might be evil or might be maybe a Black Rose spy or something like that. I'm not sure if I believe that yet, but either way, as I said, this was really unexpected. I also noticed how Caitlyn is keeping some distance from Maddie. Like here she's not accepting Maddie's embrace, she's almost pushing her away. And this is also when we see Caitlyn starting to doubt the path that she chose. This vengeful path is very far from something that Caitlyn from season 1 would ever do. And now we are seeing that Caitlyn come back and regret her decisions. And here we see Maddie trying to convince Caitlyn to abandon this path, which, if you believe in the Maddie is evil theories, might be something that someone who is against Ambessa might want, right? But for now, I do think that she's being genuine and that she just wants what's best for Caitlyn and for the city. But here we see that Caitlyn is still not over Jinx. Makes sense. She killed her mother. And again, we see Caitlyn not accepting Maddie's embrace, turning away. And again, here Caitlyn smiles, but a few seconds later, she again turns Maddie away. This is not too hard to interpret. It's not hard to understand what's going on with Caitlyn. There's a lot on her mind, a lot on her plate with Jinx, Ambessa, and the Undercity, and potentially even Vi as well. And here we are introduced to this battle between two bugs by Jinx, which is obviously being exaggerated with some really cool visuals. The song playing here is Rise. Fortiche also animated its music video. I believe these colors right here are meant to invoke the Rift Herald from League, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Also, I just noticed that Jinx's microphone here has a monkey face, and this is obviously a reference to Scuttlecrab from League. And here we saw that Jinx's bug was the one that lost, but there's also a cool detail here. If you notice on Isha's head, we can see the bunny ears from Jinx's Pow Pow minigun. Here, inside the chest, we can see black and white wings, likely referencing Jinx's Star Guardian skin. And here, I believe we see Isha doing some sign language, which is cool. This means that she is indeed mute. I'm not 100% sure what she's saying to Jinx, but this battle between bugs was a bet that they had, and if Isha won, Jinx had to go with her plan. And here, Jinx is going to pretend that she misinterpreted Isha and talk about a rematch before accepting to do what Isha wants, which is to dye her hair blue. Thanks to people on Twitter, I now know that Isha was saying rematch here. So I think I misinterpreted the scene. Isha probably just didn't want Jinx to kill the bug. And as you see, Isha is starting to dress more like Jinx, and she even has her own cloud tattoos. And here we get a better look at Isha, and we can see that she now even has a braid like Jinx. She also has the belts on the arm, even has an X on her chest, just like Jinx. And here we get basically a confirmation that this is indeed a bit of that old trope where Isha is becoming sort of a younger sister for Jinx. But something that is also interesting in this season, at least up to this point, is that we don't really see that much of Jinx's trauma anymore. She's able to talk about her sister without having those attacks that she had in season 1. And here this device is coming up again later in this act, if I'm not mistaken. And here we have Jinx telling Isha that she reminds her of Powder. We'll see this handshake again in episode 6, I believe. And here we have a very interesting line from, well, I was gonna say Jinx, but Jinx is dead. Obviously calling back to season 1, where Powder died, technically, and also to the first act of this new season, where Vi finally called Jinx Jinx. And now we are seeing, I'm gonna still call her Jinx because what else am I going to call her? But we are seeing a Jinx that has kind of lost her identity. Vi is no longer in her life, Silco is no longer in her life, even the traumas, the voices left her. So what does she has now? Who is she now? She's not Powder, she's not Jinx, who is she? And here we see this brand new device, and we first saw it in the trailers. And here we see that not everyone knows how to deal or how to operate with X-Tech. In fact, the implication seems to be that only Victor and Jace really know how to utilize the crystals, which is interesting when you take in consideration that how important X-Tech is to the city, right? There's only 2 people who know how to operate it. That's a bit weird. Unless here Ambessa is trying to do something specific with the crystals. But I don't know if that's the case. And here Rictus is about to say Black Rose. Obviously Ambessa cuts him off before he does that. I assume that the term Black Rose is a bad omen. That makes sense. But we also see a lot of frustration from Ambessa. This is something that was very subtle on the first 3 episodes, but now it's in full force here, and she believes that Jace and Heimer and Mel all disappeared because of the Black Rose. Obviously us, the viewers, know that Black Rose only took Mel, but there's also one more thing to talk about in this scene. Okay, maybe 2 things. First, in my last video, I theorized that there's something else in Piltover besides X-Tech, something that is so important that Ambessa wants, and that the Black Rose also wants, or at least doesn't want Ambessa to get it. And I was like, this can't just be X-Tech, because if that was the case, what were the suspicions that were confirmed for Ambessa when the Black Rose came for her? But it seems that it is indeed X-Tech. However, I believe that there is more to X-Tech than we know, and we obviously get a bit of that in this act with Jace and Victor later, but I think Ambessa already knows something, and the Black Rose obviously also know that, perhaps even more than Ambessa herself. And here we see a moment of vulnerability with Ambessa. I think the first ever in the series. And she's having this moment with Rictus, which is here to show us that this is the only person that she trusts. And that is obviously going to become relevant in episode 6 when Rictus dies. And now the Mohawk guy from the intro returns. Whoa, is that a League of Legends reference? And this part, actually true. Jinx is not their friend or their champion. In fact, Jinx does not care about the cause. She has given up on everything that had to do with Silco, everything that had to do with her old self. However, the people don't know this. The people believe her to be their only hope. And here we have this shot, which is going to make us believe that Jinx was the one that hijacked the PA system, when in fact that's not the case. Another shot to give us the same idea. We are supposed to think that this is Jinx. Even from the trailers, everyone was like, yeah, this is Jinx. But as we'll see, that's not the case. And here is the device Isha was putting together in Jinx's hideout. And I wonder if this is themed after the bugs. That would make sense, right? And as we'll see, this is a completely harmless attack. This is only smoke and paint, nothing else, which is one of the details that is going to make Caitlyn believe that this is not the real Jinx. And here's the reveal. This is Isha, not Jinx. I think the trailers did a very good job at misleading us. Isha is obviously doing this to keep the hope alive. And now we transition to Caitlyn's house, as you can see here in the fireplace, her family crest. And once again, we have this shot of Jinx's eye, this time with Caitlyn's reflection on this glass right here, perhaps alluding to the scope of her rifle, though I'm not sure. Well, correction, I thought Caitlyn was the one to deduce that. It was in fact Maddie. And right here, it's probably a bit hard to see, but there's a painting of a ballerina. This was also in Act 1, but I'm pretty sure I didn't mention it in that video, which is okay because it's only becoming more relevant now with these 3 new episodes. As you already know, Oriana is in fact Sinja's daughter, and this was likely a teaser for that reveal. And if it wasn't obvious from that montage of the time skip, Jinx has stayed hidden from the public ever since the paint attack on Piltover. And this line right here is really good. Ambessa is realizing that Caitlyn does not fully trust her, and in a final episode of Act 2, Vi is going to be talking with Ambessa precisely about trust, the moment where she reveals to her that Caitlyn betrayed her. And here we are getting a bit of an emotional moment with Ambessa. Something to keep in mind is that this is not the same Ambessa from Season 1, and it's also not the same Ambessa from Act 1 of Season 2, right? This is an Ambessa who has basically lost both of her children, the people that she cared the most in her life. And when she's talking to Caitlyn here, a lot of the things that she says could also be just her talking to herself. We've lost so many. Ambessa lost her daughter, the anger, the sorrow that she's feeling. You will never rest knowing that she's out there. This obviously applies to Caitlyn. She knows that Jinx is out there. This could also kind of apply to Ambessa if she knows that Mel is still alive, which she probably doesn't really know, but she also doesn't know that she's dead. Though Ambessa probably assumes the Black Rose is keeping her alive because Mel is special. But this could also apply to another character that is going to be hinted at and even speak in, I believe, the next episode, either the next one or the one after it, which is Mel's sister. But we'll get to that later. To forgive and trust in tomorrow. I'm really curious to see what happens after these 3 episodes and how this applies to Ambessa as well. The decision is yours, which kind of mirrors what Maddie told Caitlyn earlier in the episode about rebuilding the council and retreating from the Undercity. The choice was hers. This is not a very important scene, but I believe I missed this in the last episode. Obviously, he's doing shimmer treatments to his legs because he's now paraplegic. I don't know how I didn't put those two together, but it's pretty obvious. But this scene right here is just to show us that people are somewhat aware of what Victor is doing and that Salo is going to seek Victor. We are not going to see this happening. We are just going to see the aftermath of his encounter, which is that Victor helped him and he is now able to walk again. Never learned anything about the younger Matarda here, did they? Salo is going to dismiss this as everyone always caring more about Mel than him or the other council members. We know that this was one of Mel's friends, so obviously she's trying to get some information because she's worried. And here we see why he's sought Victor. He's getting desperate. The shimmer effects are diminishing. Again, we see why he was so desperate, right? This is his life now. I think Savika's arm looks a bit different here. Did she remove the speakers? If so, that's really funny. And here is when Savika learns that it wasn't Jinx, the one responsible for the stunt at the checkpoint. It was Isha. Jinx is now a symbol, Again, this wasn't something that she planned or that she wanted to. I believe this is just the aftermath of her attack on Piltover with all the paint and the Zone Grey. I believe that the Zonites saw this as a sign of revolution, and they attributed it to Jinx, and they started seeing Jinx as a revolutionary figure. Maybe Isha also had something to do with that, as we've seen that she was the one painting the murals, who knows? Either way, right now we know that this is not something that Jinx wants, but throughout these 3 new episodes that's going to change. And here we see that she's still missing her finger from her fight with Caitlyn and Vi, but she's getting a new one in either this episode or the next one. Here we get another potential foreshadowing that something is going to happen to Jinx's left eye, and here we see a bit of Jinx's trauma coming back when Savika tells her that Silco sacrificed a lot for her and that she believed in her, and we get a very emotional moment between Jinx and, well, herself, as she speaks with Silco without him being there, and comes to terms with him being gone. And now we get a couple shots of people that are gone, including the 3 council members. We saw these in last week's preview or teaser for Act 2. And as I said, interrogation comes back in this act a few times. Here's one of them. This is the guy from the intro, the guy from the checkpoint, and he's the one that is going to spill the beans on where the rally is going to happen. And now we have this shot of the Firelight's hideout, and we can see some of the corrupted leaves from episode 1 of season 2, I believe. Obviously Scar, we saw him at the checkpoint as well, and we got that quote from Ambessa saying that Heimerdinger and Jace were gone, and we see that Echo is as well. Echo and Heimer don't make an appearance in this act, so we don't know what happened to them, and we'll see what happened to Jace, I believe, at the end of this episode. And here, the last symbol of someone that is gone. We saw the statue of the 3 council members, we saw the Firelight's mural, now we are seeing Vander's statue, and I think it's interesting that this was the place that was chosen, because as we saw in Act 1, Savika is becoming a bit more like Vander. Just like Vander in Act 1 of Season 1, she did not want to give Jinx away to Piltover, and that might seem weird for some people who don't really understand Savika and only see her as the traitor from Season 1, but to be honest, Savika is the most loyal character in the show. She's loyal to the cause, and that cause is the Undercity. She left Vander because she thought that Vander was no longer suited to be the leader of this cause. She followed Silco, but even him started to also change, and now we are seeing that changed in Savika as well. So maybe she's understanding that her vision of the cause was maybe not entirely what she thought it was, and that her intentions were good, but there was something else missing. Because if she was truly about the Undercity and its people, she would never have allowed Silco to do what he did to the city, to flood the city with Shimmer, to sacrifice so many things and so many people, right? I think now she understands Vander's point of view a bit better, because she is the one that is trying to rally the people together. And it's also important for us to keep Vander in mind, because he is returning in this season. And Isha is getting ready to do what Jinx doesn't want to do, which is to give hope to the people, to fight for the cause. Even the Firelights are going to meet up with Savika, which makes total sense. Their leader is gone, the Undercity is in chaos right now with the Piltovans and the Noxians. It makes sense for all of them to work together. They all want the same thing. It's just like what Savika said in Act 1, Topside is the real enemy. Also here we see a lot of familiar faces, obviously Scar from Season 1, but all of these other Firelights were also in the first season, including this kid right here, which I believe was the one that approached Caitlyn. And we get the return of Jericho from Season 1. And this person right here nods to him and he closes his shop, obviously because he's also going to the rally. But we can see that now that Piltover has taken over the Undercity, there are even enforcers eating right here. Also, what a poster right here. Very reminiscent of the Jace one from Season 1. But it makes sense because Caitlyn, after the martial law was put into practice, she is now the leader of Piltover, basically. Another character from Season 1 who returns. We first saw her in the last drop, before the time skip of Season 1, and then we saw her again because she was one of the first people that Vi went to once she got out of prison. Behind her, we can see some of the goons from the Camp Barons that supposedly Caitlyn imprisoned. And look who's also here. Jericho. I'm kidding. Obviously, it's Singed. As I was saying in the beginning, these are the Jinxers. not the inks from conversions. And I just said this, but here are the goons from the Camberans. But it seems that the people just wanna see Jinx. They don't care about Civica. This must be so frustrating for Civica, because from day one, she believed in the cause. And here comes Jinx, which ruins everything, kills Silco, never cared about anything related to the liberation of Zon, and now every single person in the Undercity believes that she is the one that's going to save them. Like, that must be so frustrating for her. And here's Isha to give hope to all of them. And so much for a new arm, am I right? It lasted what, 2 episodes? 3? Feels bad. Singed is holding the exact same knife or blade from season 1, and he's holding it because he just cut his own hand to lure in Warwick. Speaking of which, here he is in the exact same pose from Act 1, and we see the valve on his back activating as Singed's blood starts dropping to the floor, and he's awake. And after seeing the episodes, you might think that Singed is like playing for the chess here and he just wanted Ambessa's attention. I don't know if he was thinking that far. Honestly, I think he was just here to test his own experiment, right? To see how far he could push this new beast that he created. Because we've seen from the endings of the previous episodes that Singed used his own blood on Warwick. And as we saw, it was his blood being spilled that woke Warwick. So I think there's some kind of connection between the two. This to say that I just think that Singed is here to experiment, to see what happens once Warwick gets out. And not necessarily to get the attention of Ambessa. I think that was more so him being lucky and being in the right place at the right time. And now Jinx returns from her talk with no one, but with Silco. And I didn't mention this before, but we can see like what remains of her weapons, including Pow Pow right here, and Fishbones, which was very much in frame when she said that Jinx died. And here the visuals for Jinx's trauma come back, and they come back when Civica tells her that the enforcers took Isha. As we saw in that monologue that she had, Isha is basically her friend now, her only friend. So it makes sense for her to react like this. And now, instead of Clagger and Milo, her voices are of Vi and Silco. The Jinx identity was born with Silco, while Powder was who she was before Vi left her. Going frame by frame here, we see Silco. Notice the red eye. I believe this is Milo. I'm guessing this is Clagger right here. Not sure about this one. Oh, this is probably Civica maybe? Not sure. Okay, yeah, this is definitely Civica, the hair, right? This might be Vi then. Here is Milo again. And Clagger, right? Yeah, this is definitely Vi. Notice the gauntlets. Yeah, so basically these are all the voices in Jinx's head, or basically the 2 people that she killed, as well as the people who are trying to pull her in a certain direction, right? Vi wanted Powder back, Silco wanted Jinx, Civica wants her to be a symbol, while she herself doesn't know what she is or what she wants to do. You have to be someone. You have to be someone else, right? This is someone who didn't get to have a normal childhood, who never get to be herself outside of traumas or outside of what people wanted or expected from her. Now we get flashes of her face, followed by Silco. And notice how Silco has his eyes closed here. This is likely from the moment when she killed him or when they were both underwater and she let go of the body. And we get some really cool frames here and 2 X's on his eyes. He's dead. Then we see Vi with her enforcer outfit and mask, basically a betrayer in Jinx's eyes. And we see Civica's arm. Cool. Oh, and these are Vi's gauntlets, I think, layered on top of Jinx's arms, protecting her from Civica's arm, maybe. Either the hands are protecting her from Civica's arm, or Civica's arm is trying to free her from the hands. That might be it. Either way, it's clear that she is torn between all these expectations and ideas that people have for her. And here we can see the gang together. We got Milo in blue, Clagger in red, Silco in green, we got Civica in yellow, Isha in orange, and Vi in pink. And they are all calling her Jinx. Now that makes sense, right? Vi gave up on Powder and started calling her Jinx. Silco always believed that she was Jinx. Milo also always told Powder that she was a Jinx. Not sure about Clagger, but she killed him, so it's natural that he's also part of her trauma. And now Civica also wants her to be Jinx because that's the hero that the people believe in. So they all want her to be Jinx. But as she said a few minutes ago, Jinx is dead. She no longer wants to be Jinx. Oh, and here we get a shot of her eyes also with X's. I wonder. And we see that her thumb is on her left eye. And here we see the blood from Singed falling on the floor of the cable car. This might be the same car that we later see Warwick jump out of. And now we get this first person POV from Warwick himself as he chases the scent of blood, obviously very reminiscent of his W ability in League. And we even hear the same sound effect. We can see him arriving at the Vander statue where Singed cut his hand, obviously very poetic because this is Vander, as we'll see. He even looks at his own statue, which is obviously foreshadowing the reveal that he is Vander. I think it was the worst kept secret, but if you didn't know anything about League and you didn't really watch any theories or discourse online, you probably didn't see this coming. Also, this voice sounds familiar. Is this the same voice actress as Vi? I'm not sure. And there we go, she has the new finger. In the last scene she didn't. The Warden from Season 1 returns. And now we see that Jinx finally modified her pistol to be Zapper. The design was already pretty much the same, but it used to be just a normal pistol. I think this is a very interesting choice because it's basically a taser, right? No longer a handgun, which means that now it's non-lethal. And I wonder if this is part of her process of distancing herself from this idea of Jinx and being a murderer and a criminal. That's really cool if that's the case. And here we see that the guards were playing Tellstones. For those who don't know, Tellstones is a game that exists in Runeterra, which is played with these stones right here, each as a symbol, and basically one person has to figure out the symbols of each of the pieces from another person. Now this game exists in basically all regions of Runeterra, and each has different symbols, each has slightly different rules, and you are even encouraged to create your own rules. In the real world, we also got one of the versions of this game, the one from Demacia, and this version right here doesn't seem to match any that we've seen before, at least comparing the pieces to the Demacian one that we got, as well as the other ones that we saw in Legends of Runeterra. And I think this is the symbol of the domination runes in League, right? Here we get a better look at two of the pieces. We see here the scales, and this seems to be the sword, though it looks very Noxian here. So it's possible that these are an Noxian version of the game. Actually, the Tellstones here are based on the Demacian version. We know that because of the specific symbols, though why they have a different art style, I'm not sure. And earlier, we actually saw a guard doing one of the moves you can do in-game, which is picking. This allows you to see the symbol of one of the pieces. And here we see the shot that we saw in the preview last week, and we are getting the shot that we saw from the trailers of all of the Jinx followers touching her, almost to say, whoa, you're actually real, we believe in you, please help us. Or at least thanking her for finally showing up. Even Scar acknowledges this, which is pretty cool. And obviously this character right here, who knew her before she became Jinx, and just as Ambessa was about to check on her suspicions of that enforcer that she saw, a destroyed cable car appears. And again, this might be the same one where Singed was, which would explain why Warwick jumped on it. And now we get this scene, which is very reminiscent of the Warwick trailer from years ago, especially because it also ends with him jumping toward the camera. And look how funny this frame is, god. And how convenient, Isha is the only one that didn't manage to free herself, and here Stink Moss was one of the bugs. And I believe this scene is referencing one from Season 1. Not sure which one. I think this might be a callback to the moment that Silco took powder in episode 3 of Season 1. And here Singed is going to lock himself up because he knows what's coming. In fact, he might be even a bit disappointed because he probably wasn't expecting Jinx to intervene. He probably just wanted to see what would happen if Warwick entered the prison with just the enforcers there. And this was the shot that was used in one of the new cards in Legends of Runeterra. And here not only do we get this point of view from Warwick where we can see the blood inside of everyone, but there's also this flash of Singed, again hinting that there is a connection between the two, likely because Singed was the one that not only created him, but also used his own blood in that creation. And here he howls, like he does in the game, an obvious hint of how wolf-like he's going to become in the future. And here we can hear Warwick's theme, which is awesome. And there's some really cool frames. Look at this. Very cool. Big fat hero. Exactly what she said when she freed all the people. If we notice here on Zapper, we can find a symbol for the Precision Rune Path from League, a reminder that these were also used in the X-Core, and Precision makes sense since Jinx is an ADC in League. Beautiful shot of Jinx fighting Warwick, and if you were wondering how Jinx is able to keep up with Warwick, it's important to remember that Jinx was also augmented with shimmer. And we can see here her eyes being purple and whoop, she's gone. Here we get one of the shots from the trailers. Another very cool frame of Warwick getting hit with Zapper. And we can see how Warwick got there. He killed all the enforcers and the big warden. And Jinx was about to do her classic, oh, I'm about to die, let me just blow myself up. She did this with Echo in Season 1, and maybe she was also going to do this with Vi in Act 1 of Season 2, but this time around things don't go like they did with the Echo fight because Warwick grabs her hand. And here we get the lullaby from episode 1 of Season 1 playing, the one where Powder was singing that bridge song. I believe that's the song that's playing right now. And we see Powder. Warwick, or should I say Vander, is recognizing Jinx as Powder. His eyes turn from red to green and blue, which are the same colors of the eyes of the Merkwolves that we saw Singed capture and kill in Act 1 of Season 2. And it's funny that the subtitles already call him Warwick. I wonder where the name is gonna come from, because so far no one has called him Warwick, and for now, this sounds exactly like Vander, same voice actor. Alright, so now moving on to the second episode of Act 2, called Blisters and Bedrock. This is an expression that will come up multiple times throughout the episode. And this episode starts with the pit fighter montage that we've seen. Netflix published this on YouTube a couple weeks ago. I've already made a breakdown of it, so if you want to check that out, feel free to do so, but I'm still going to mention a lot of details from this scene in this video. So first here we have that one big goon from Silco from Season 1. We see here the term butterfly weight, and that's only interesting because so far butterflies have appeared a couple times in the show. From Victor and Jace's flashback, we saw that one in Caitlyn's home as well. And butterfly is obviously a symbol of metamorphosis, of change. It's very, very tied to Victor's theme. I'm not sure if the term butterfly weight here is hinting at that or if it's completely unrelated. That could be the case. And we see here Loris, Vi's friend, who has still not said a single word in the show, and he wasn't even named. We just know that his name is Loris from TFT, but we can see that he's holding one of the betting tickets, and he's the only one in the audience betting on Vi. Everyone else has a yellow ticket representing the scholar, and we see those tickets right here. And Vi hits him with an uppercut, which is an obvious callback to episode 3 of Season 1, where she does the same thing to him. And this is basically taking place at the same time as the montage from the first episode. There we saw what was happening with Caitlyn and the Undercity. Here we are seeing what's happening with Vi. She is just participating in these pit fighter fights, winning money, using that money to buy drinks over and over. And as you may already know, throughout this montage, we are going to skip between 3 different scenes, I believe, which are the scenes from inside the arena, the scenes in the bar, and the scenes inside Vi's apartment. Here we can see that they are still on good terms. He is still in the arena betting on her, and now she's winning fights, everyone is voting on her, and here we can see a hand which is likely from Jinx. If not, then it's from one of the Jinxers, but I'm pretty sure it's Jinx because we are going to see her in a second. And we can see here the symbol on Vi's jacket, which has 2 dogs, which could be interpreted in a lot of ways. Obviously, there's the Warwick/Vander connection, because he's turning into a dog. There's also the fact that Vi is split between the Undercity and Piltover, or at least was at some point. There's also the fact that Warwick was made using parts from a Merkwolf, which has 2 heads, so yeah, there's a lot of ways that this could be interpreted. Now, speaking about the people that she's fighting, they seem to be just generic opponents. This one catches my eye, however, because of the unique mask that he has. We haven't seen anything like this in the show, and this mask has these markings under the eyes, which are very reminiscent of the Black Rose. In fact, I can't quite see, but this might be some kind of rose symbol. It's really hard to tell. Maybe this is some kind of Black Rose spy. I don't know what a Black Rose spy would be doing in an arena like this. That doesn't really make sense. So maybe that's not what's going on here. However, I do think this guy is going to become relevant, or at least appear again somewhere, because his design is too unique for him to just be a background character here. And I mean unique in the sense that we haven't seen any red mask like this in the show. The other opponents just seem like normal citizens, either humans or from the fish species that we've seen, but this guy right here seems much more unique, stands out much more. In the previous episode, we saw someone fleeing from prison with this exact outfit, so maybe I'm overthinking all of this. And here we can see them celebrating, and then we see Vi starting to lose herself. It's important to remember that Yes, this is a very cool fighting montage, but this is also a coping mechanism for Vi and everything that she went through. And now we have the scene of her apartment, and I believe one of the shots is reminiscent of when she was lying on Caitlyn's bed. And as we progress through the montage, every shot looks familiar, but it's starting to become a bit more fucked up. Again, we see some of the Jinxers. We see Loris taking the cup away from Vi. We see Loris bringing Vi home. She looks at the symbols of the Enforcers, or the joint force between Enforcers and Noxians. Here we can see a graffiti of what is likely either Warwick or Twitch. I think this might just be like a Twitch Easter egg, because why would they put a graffiti of Warwick so soon? But let me know down below what you think. As I said, these are banners from the Enforcers, and behind them she sees Caitlyn. But this is not current Caitlyn, as we'll see. Again, each time she looks worse, and now she breaks her mirror, and it's starting to look like Jinx's mirror, the one she has on her hideout. And as we can see here, this is not present Caitlyn, this is Caitlyn from Season 1. This was the Caitlyn that Vi fell in love with, and we can see that not only from her outfit, but also because around her neck she has a blue collar, when now she has a red one, which kinda represents that now she's working with Noxians. But obviously this isn't Caitlyn, this is one of Silco's goons from Season 1, and she flips him off, like she does to one of the random Zonites when she leaves prison in Act 2 of Season 1. And now they are not in good terms anymore, obviously because of Vi's self-destructive actions and the way that she's coping with things. We can see them arguing here, and this is the last that we see from him. He's not returning in this act, which just really goes to show how fast everything goes by in this new season. We barely really had any time to really develop a relationship between these two guys. Like, we haven't heard a single word from him this season yet. So like, why am I supposed to care that they are not in good terms anymore? I don't really care about this relationship, right? The show has not made me care. And now she is drinking alone, of course, and who's watching her? None other but Jinx. This scene right here is reminiscent of the scene from the previous act, where Jinx was also screaming underwater. In the audience now, instead of her friend, we see Jinx. And here was when the YouTube version ended. This shot of Caitlyn is definitely inspired from the one in Season 1, when they are both on Caitlyn's bed. We can see that she's even wearing the outfit that Vi stole for her. And here Jinx is writing her name on her face, trying to copy Vi, but as we can see, since she was using a mirror, her name is backwards. Obviously to taunt Vi to some extent, but I think this is also her accepting that name as her own. And I think this reaction from Vi makes sense. Jinx was the one that killed Vander, Clagger and Milo. Jinx was the one that sided with Silco. Jinx was the one that shot the rocket at the council, and Jinx was ultimately the cause of Vi and Caitlyn going their separate ways. And here we can see what's left of Ambessa's mask after the encounter with Warwick, and Caitlyn's detective vision returns from Season 1. We first saw this in the airship that was attacked by the firelights and destroyed by Jinx, and here we get a reminder again that Caitlyn is not dumb. She's incredibly smart. She was able to deduce what happened in the present, and she was able to conclude that it was all the fault of Singed. And here we get this line from Singed, hinting that he is not just a mad scientist, he's well aware of the politics going around in both cities. And here we see the items that Singed had in his possession, including the locket with the picture of his daughter, which we'll see in a bit. And I believe this was the syringe that he used on Silco before operating on Jinx. And I just noticed this, but in Singed's locket, we can see what are likely his initials. It will be revealed later that his name is Revek, but some of you might recognize that name already. That's a surname, and his first name is likely Corin. So we see here C and an R. Corin Revek. Here we can see Singed reacting to the music box from the locket, which makes sense. And obviously Ambessa has seen the picture and has seen his reaction to it. She is already putting one and one together. And here we see that Caitlyn is still very much obsessed with Jinx. Like, as I said, she's smart. She knows that there is no connection between Singed and Jinx, yet she's still asking this. And now we are finally going to see what happened to Mel. Last time we saw her, both her and Elora were getting captured by the Black Rose. Speaking of which, she's coughing up petals. Black Rose! And now she is in some kind of prison. We will get the name of this place in a bit, but as you can see, this kind of looks like a rose. This isn't really like a detail, it's literally in this episode. We see the rose in the ceiling, which also appeared in the first act. And when I saw this character, I immediately knew who it was, because this is a character that we have never seen before, and it's a guy that has to have some connection to Mel. Yeah, this was obviously going to be her brother. But as we'll see, this is not actually her brother. And whoa, this was brutal. They just completely destroyed Elora. Whoa. But as I said in my last video, there's one shot in the trailers that takes place in the same area from Mel's flashback from season 1, which has this shadowy figure that looks like Elora. So I think the Black Rose is going to use this shadow version of Elora to taunt Mel later on. Here we get the first mention of this group of people that used to rule the old world. I think that he's talking about the Black Rose, maybe, because we are obviously seeing this from a Noxian perspective. So he's either talking about like the people before Mordekaiser himself, or the people that overthrew Mordekaiser, which were the Black Rose and the Noxai. And here we get a name for this prison, which is Ocularum. From what I could gather, this is just the Latin word for eyes, or the plural of eye, which might explain why this is also evoking the imagery of eyes. Not only that, but we know that Mel's brother here is not real, it's not actually him. So it's possible that everything here is an illusion, which ties back to the theme of eyes. Nothing that she's seeing is actually real. And here again, we have a reference to the ancients. Again, this could be the people before Mordekaiser, the people during Mordekaiser, or the people after Mordekaiser. All of those lived before modern day Noxus. It could also be talking about a group of people that operated during the Rune Wars. Here he mentions that this type of prison was built to seal away false prophets, and to me this is either people trying to keep mages locked away during the Rune Wars, or the Noxians trying to seal away mages that pose a threat to their vision, to their empire. And when I say Noxians, this could be just the actual government of Noxus, or the Black Rose, operating either in the shadows or while manipulating the government. And here I wonder if Peacock Princess is like a joke on Azir. As far as we know, Azir is not a peacock, he's a hawk, but he was once a prince. I don't subscribe to the theories that the Medarda were once Shuriman, at least not yet, but hey, maybe this is a hint toward that. And here's the confirmation, this is indeed Kino, or at least an illusion of Kino, which is Mel's brother and Ambessa's son. And here's an interesting detail, this necklace right here is the same one from that woman that Ambessa killed right in front of Mel when she was younger. And if you remember that conversation, Ambessa was proposing that Mel would turn into the ruler of that area. However, she had to prove herself worthy, and to do that she had to kill that woman, which she didn't, and that means that maybe it was Mel's brother who became the ruler of that area. That would explain why he's depicted here with that same necklace. After comparing the two, they are not the same, but they are very, very similar, with the one we see on Kino having the Medarda symbol. So I think I'm still right, and he became the leader of that area. And here we get another shot from the trailers, a mural depicting Jinx's paint attack on Piltover, also featuring Vander, which is interesting. I really wonder who painted this and if they knew that Jinx used to work for Silco. And here Vi's reaction says a lot. She's having, I guess, the same realization as Savika. Like, damn, out of all people in Zon, Jinx is the one that turns into a symbol of hope? What the hell, right? I believe Jinx even says something like this in the previous episode as well. Like, Jinx, a hero? Really? And this expression right here, like, big fat hero. And here Jinx, Vi, and Isha enter these caves with cart rails. As we'll see, these used to be mines. Not any mines, mines where Silco and Vander used to work. Like, Jinx is kinda right here. Vi was basically Vander's protege. Obviously what happened, but Jinx was the one that actually went to prison and freed everyone. What was Vi doing all of that? She was having a breakdown and very unhealthy coping mechanisms. And here Vi is saying that Jinx wouldn't last a second without her gadgets, which is an obvious callback to that scene from Act 1 of Season 1, where she's telling Jinx that she has the gadgets and she has the fists. And I think this is the first time in Arcane that Jinx calls Vi fat hands. This is obviously referencing one of her codes in League. And I think it's really funny how Isha jumps on Vi to help Jinx. And Isha bites Vi the same way she bit that one goon from Act 1 of Season 2. And Vi instinctively reacts by swatting her aside. And Isha starts bleeding, which, since we've seen the previous episode, we are starting to draw connections to Warwick. Is Warwick going to come after her? What's gonna happen? And here Isha is checking the road ahead to see if it's the right path, and us as the viewers are left wondering if Warwick is gonna find her while she's alone. And here she's talking about the last episode of Act 1 of Season 1, where not only did they not ask for help, but the sisters also didn't went together. Each one of them went alone, and we all know what happened. He's your father too. I believe this is a reference to a quote from Milo in that same episode, where he's saying that Vi doesn't need to do it alone because Vander is also his and Clagger's father. And here's the quote that might lead you to believe that maybe Singed predicted all of this or was planning all of this. Again, I don't think that was the case. I think he just wanted to test out Warwick, but he ended up with a better deal than he was expecting. And this line is interesting because obviously Ambessa wants Warwick to use him as a weapon. Caitlyn might want him dead or him gone to protect the people, but Ambessa wants to use him. And this is also very in line with everything that Ambessa is doing in Piltover. She wants X-Tech, she wants to use X-Tech as a weapon. And here we got a couple references to places that we know from the map. And Ambessa strikes a deal with Singed. I predicted this, let's go. And here is Singed describing Vander. Singed being much older than both Vander and Silco, he likely saw what we will see later, which is Vander and Silco building the underground. Also, as someone who knew Singed before this new Arcane version of him, it's so weird to see him showing empathy at all. Right? But as he says that Vander was a victim of a great tragedy, he looks at his daughter's locket, which makes perfect sense. Singed is probably one of the few people that knows the full story. Silco and Vander and the kids and all the awful things that they went through. And here I just really like this description of Vander. Ferocious will to live, incredible tolerance from pain, both things that we know from Vander. And here we see the pump that's on Warwick's back. And we get a couple flashbacks of Vander's memories, as Singed is talking about how his mind is now fractured. We see Powder's monkey, we see flashbacks of the war that happened before season 1, the one where Vi's parents died, and here we see young Silco, and there seems to be someone on his feet, perhaps the parents of Vi and Powder. And if this is Felicia, then later on Silco is going to find Jinx's unconscious body in the exact same location that he found her mother's. I think that might be the case because later we learned that it was the death of Vi's mother that caused Vander to lash out against Silco. Before we didn't really know when this happened, but now we know that first they built the underground, then Violet and Powder were born, then that war on the bridge happened, Vi's and Powder's mother died, and then this happened, they fought, and they went their separate ways, and the rest we see in season 1. Here we get a shot from the first episode of the show, of the mother of the sisters dead, and I believe this is the same moment that we see in season 1 before Vander finds Violet and Powder, right? He's punching one of the enforcers, then he puts his gloves down and takes the kids. And we transition into this shot where now he's half beast and he's also beating up one of the enforcers. And here Singed is talking about how he hasn't found the right catalyst to bring back Vander's mind. And I think this is very interesting because at the same time that he says this, we see Vander's family. The implication being that to restore his mind, the catalyst is his family. And I think the usage of the word catalyst is very interesting here, because if you read Warwick's lore, then you know that that version of Singed was just trying to create a monster, a beast, but he wasn't able to find the right catalyst. Again, same word. What happens in the story is that Warwick dies, and turns out that death was the catalyst missing for his full transformation. So I think that to restore Vander's mind, the catalyst is his family. For him to become a full beast, the catalyst is his death. And as we'll see in episode 3, that's likely what happened. And here, Violet is blurry, while Powder isn't, because Vander saw Jinx in the prison, but he's yet to see Vi. And it's only when he sees both that he regains some control. And here we get the first hint at some kind of connection between Vander and the mother of the sisters. Here, I even thought for a second, whoa, is Vander going to be their biological dad? Thankfully, that's not the case. And I assume this is Silco after their fight, after Vander almost drowned him. And not only is he saying the expression that's going to come up again in a bit, but he's also drinking out of this specific cup. We're also going to see this cup again in a second. His wound looks recent, he's full of like algae and all dirty. I think this has to be what he looked like during that fight or after that fight. And here we get the first hint that there's something special about Mel. Also, these runes seem similar to the ones from X-Tech, though I don't think they are the same. I need to confirm that while editing this video. After checking, these are indeed the same symbols we see every time blue magic is used, from X-Tech to the mage from the flashback. Funny enough, these are the same symbols we see on Ryze's cards in LOR, Ryze being hinted to be that specific mage, which would make sense since he can also teleport. So perhaps whatever is going on with the Arcane and the Wild runes is related to the World runes. My friend Seth even pointed out the similarities between Victor and Brand being a mage that was corrupted by the power of the World runes. And if you remember from the first season, Heimer had these flashbacks of what is most likely the Rune Wars, or events related to it. So we have a lot of arrows pointing in the direction of all of these being related to the World Runes Basilic mentioned, and here he's saying that Ambessa fell in love in Basilic, and from this affair came a child. It's going to be confirmed later, but it's very obvious that this child was Mel. Whatever that child inherit is of terrible interest to our captors. It's very interesting that Mel's brother is the one giving all of this information, since we know that this is not actually her brother. But again, it's another hint that there's something really special about Mel, and this reaction right here might hint that Mel knows that she's special. In the first act, it was kinda obvious that Mel was the reason why Jace and herself survived without a scratch, but it's not really that obvious if she knew that or not, if she was aware of the power that she has. This reaction here is leading me to believe that maybe she's aware of the power that she has. However, if she is, why didn't she use it earlier against the Black Rose, right? So maybe she isn't. Maybe she isn't. And here Ambessa asks if what he's doing is going to allow him to locate Warwick. Obviously he says not precisely, because what he's doing right now is creating some sort of concoction that he's going to use in his daughter's chamber. Here we get a bit more information about Singed's past, which was hinted in the last season because he mentions that he parted ways with Heimerdinger at some point, so it makes sense that he was once either a student or a teacher at the academy. And Caitlin here mentions that he was dismissed, which obviously ties again to the fact that he and Heimerdinger parted ways. Here we see the Merc Wolves that he used to create Warwick, as well as a lot of freaky creatures. We see here, I believe these are some possums, and I don't really know what this is. I don't know if I want to know, and I don't know what this is right here. Doesn't look like Rio. And whoa, just straight up a human head here? Okay. But also we are getting the confirmation that Singed was the one that created Shimmer. I think that's heavily implied in the first season, but never outright confirmed. But now we are getting a confirmation, and we also got this a few days ago when a couple of descriptions of various Arcane champions on Universe were updated. And in the case of Singed, his description now mentions that he was the one that created Shimmer. So if you've been following that kind of news, you already knew this. Is this one of Silku's goons, the blonde kid that attacked Vi and her gang? And it makes sense that they are panning to this head when she's talking about Shimmer, right? This was the first victim of Shimmer, or at least the first person to use Shimmer. And now we have the big reveal that his last name is Revek. If you only know Arcane, this probably means nothing to you. If you are a casual League player, this probably also means nothing to you. But if you follow the lore of League of Legends, you know that Revek, or Corin Revek, is the name of Oriana's father. And Singed being Oriana's father has been a theory ever since the last episode of Season 1 came out. In case you didn't know, in Season 1, Singed mentions having a daughter once, and in the last episode, we can see his locket for the first time, and in it there's a picture of a girl that really looks like Oriana. At the time, to me, that wasn't enough to conclude that Singed was Oriana's father, but a lot of people jumped on that theory, and in this season we've once again seen his locket, and it was not hard to assume that whatever he was doing to Vander was to save his daughter, especially with the context from Season 1, where he mentions that the mutation has to survive, obviously hinting that there's something wrong with his daughter or that she's dying, and that he was doing experiments on Rio and on Warwick so that he could prolong the life of his daughter as well. The thing is, not that long ago, we got the game Convergence, and that game is obviously not canon, it can't be, it's not cohesive with Arcane, but in that game we play as Echo, and for example Warwick is one of the bosses, so we know that by then Singed has already created Warwick. That's not something that Arcane came up with, that was already in the lore, but in that game we also see Corin as an NPC, and Corin makes these clockwork statues of champions, one of them being Singed. It was very clear from the game that Corin and Singed were separate characters, which funny enough led to a lot of people believing that Corin and Singed were going to be a gay couple, with Oriana being their daughter. I don't know if I believe that, but I have to say that right now we do not know Singed's first name. We see here that he's only called Revek, so there's the chance that him and Corin share the same last name. And you might point out, but the locket has a C on it, right? Well, maybe the locket is from Corin, not from Singed. Personally, I don't believe this. I think that they are retconning Singed to be Corin. Because if Corin still exists somewhere and it's not Singed, what's the point of him existing? In the sense that in Oriana's lore, Corin was her father, and Corin was the one that replaced her body when she got ill. So if Singed now is the one, as we'll see, that's keeping Oriana alive, what's really the point of Corin? Obviously the season hasn't ended yet, and maybe Corin is going to get a hold of Oriana and he's going to start replacing her body until she becomes a machine, but I don't really think that's going to happen. I think that Singed is indeed Corin Revok, and that they are completely retconning old Corin, as well as retconning Oriana's lore in general. With this being said, I was also a bit on the fence about Oriana making an appearance in Arcane, because I didn't believe that there would be enough time for her to have a character arc in the show. With just half a season, and she's only being revealed on the second half of the second season. Yeah, there's no way that there would be enough time, and in fact it won't, because I don't think Oriana is going to do anything in the story. I think she's just going to appear here as Singed's daughter, and I don't think that she's going to leave that chamber until the end of the show. And here Singed is going to say, why does anyone commit acts others deem unspeakable for love? Which is obviously going to resonate with both Ambessa and Caitlyn. Also, I think it's really cool how the key for the room where his daughter is inside the locket. And it seems to be the same type of key that we've seen from Caitlyn's family. Oh god, what's going on here? Oh no, can't wait for people to say that this is Twitch, right? It does kind of look like a mouse, and this looks like a child. Alright, so we are about to get the Oriana reveal, but before that we can see here a ballerina. These plus the music box motif are obviously tied to Oriana. And there we go, ladies and gentlemen, Oriana. And this line right here, whoa, this just hits so hard. I would never expected Arcane to make me sympathize with Singed in any way. Or I think maybe I expected it, but I didn't want it to happen. Because if you know Singed from the old lore, he's not really a good guy at all. And here he really isn't as well, but he's not a crazy scientist for crazy science sake. He actually has a more relatable motive, even if you don't agree with his actions, which I don't. And also here we have a better look at his daughter, and yeah, this is obviously Oriana. And here's the confirmation that yes, everything that Singed is doing is to cure his daughter, and that includes Warwick. And here we can see a couple more details, including a dress, and now we see that the ballerina is a trophy, which means that his daughter was a ballet dancer. And this is an interesting line. He's saying that he's trying to keep his daughter alive. Obviously makes sense with everything we know from Singed and everything I said a couple minutes ago, but it's also interesting when you take in consideration his relationship with Victor. Victor wasn't necessarily trying to cure death, but he was also trying to prolong his life. And Singed is aware of the X-Core and how Victor planned to use that to extend his own life, and that is going to be relevant later when Singed approached Victor with the intention that at some point Victor would help him get whatever Singed needs from Warwick so he can cure his daughter. And now we return to Mel and the guy who she believes is her brother, and we are seeing all these patterns, all these runes, and they are the same color as Mel's, I was gonna say magic, but that's not yet revealed, let's say as the same color as her tattoos. And here we see the first hints that this is not actually her brother, as he dissipates in a puddle, same puddle that we before saw his reflection on a couple scenes ago. Now, I don't really know what's really happening, but it's clear that these are hints that he's not actually real. And this is such a nice moment. Mel is not only smart, but she does not hesitate. The moment that she finds out that this is not her brother, she slams him into the wall. And here we get some nice impact frames. And instead of blood, this is actually the Black Rose's magic. And now his face is going to turn into a couple familiar ones, starting with Ambessa, then the girl that Ambessa killed, then Elora, then Mel herself, Jace, Mel when she was younger, and then we repeat the cycle. And we can even see here the nose or ear changing, I think. Yeah, I think it's a nose, right? This looks like a nose. I didn't notice this the first time, I think. And now we get a new face. Mel with black and yellow eyes. And what is this right here? None other but the markings of LeBlanc. I'm so curious to know what's special about Mel and why the Black Rose want her so bad. And now we are going to get a cool transition from Mel's eyes into this rose pattern, which is the same one from the prison where she is, which again just comes full circle. The name of the prison is Eyes in plural, and it looks like both an eye and a rose, and we get this transition merging all of these themes together. And we return to this area where we saw Elora and Mel getting trapped in. And now we are seeing that for some reason they did give Mel like the right information. I don't know why, but yes, indeed Ambessa had a child, and indeed this child is very special, and the Black Rose wants it. They are saying here that at first they thought that Kino, Mel's brother, could have been that child, but that wasn't the case. But then Ambessa led them right to Piltover, right? Which means that The Black Rose went for Ambessa's son, probably killed him, and what did Ambessa do? She obviously was worried about Mel, so she paid her a visit. But by doing so, she led the Black Rose straight to Mel. And now we have this very, very cool reveal. Whoever this is, and a lot of people think it's LeBlanc, whoever this is Mel's sister. And I have to say, I don't think this is LeBlanc, unless they are retconning the hell out of her character. This wouldn't really make that much sense, because LeBlanc has existed for centuries. So I believe for now that this is a brand new character, also related to the Black Rose, and I don't think that this character is Ambessa's daughter as well. I think this might be the daughter of the man with whom Ambessa had an affair with. So this would be Mel's half-sister. And it's possible that that man is the same one that Kinu crossed. Because as far as we know, Kinu is the legitimate son, he is the son of Ambessa's husband, Mel is the one that came from an affair, and I think it's possible that Kinu met with Mel's biological father, and that might have led to his death. But it's also possible that crossing the wrong man was just a story that Ambessa made up, and that none of that is true, but for now we don't really know. I think a lot of people are going to theorize that LeBlanc possessed someone or transformed into a man or something and had an affair with Ambessa. I don't really want to think about that theory. I don't like it, but I just know that a lot of people are going to jump on it. Personally, I'm going to wait and see. For now, I don't think this is LeBlanc. I think this is another member from the Black Rose that we haven't seen yet, because we don't really know that many characters from the Black Rose. If we ignore LOR followers, there's only LeBlanc, Elise, Cassiopeia and her mother, and Vladimir, but obviously Vladimir is not going to be Mel's sister, and I hope he's also not her father. I really hope so. There's also the possibility that the term sister here is not being used in a biological sense. Maybe this person calls Mel's sister because they have a similar power or another kind of connection, and not necessarily because they have at least one parent in common. Can't wait to find out what this is about. Like, this is for now kind of a side plot to the story. I want to see how everything wraps around and how these loose points all connect to each other at the end. But now we are finally getting the confirmation that yes, she has some kind of power. Not only that, but there's something special about this power. I can't wait to find out what that is. And here we see the tattoos on her body shine. This ties back with those frames that we've seen of her tattoos shining as danger approaches her, be it the rocket or that guy during the ceremony. And look at this impact frame of Mel. So cool. Yeah, I can't wait to find out what this is. I really think that this is going to be something brand new. I don't think this is going to be Kindred or the Solari or Shuriman or Zonius, anything like that. I think this might tie to the Arcane somehow, actually, because the people that Victor saves, the parts where once was shimmer, turn into gold. So maybe there's a connection here. Not sure yet. Again, there's also the possibility that LeBlanc did something to Ambessa or to the father of Mel, but there's still not enough evidence for that. And we finally return to the mines, where we see Warwick following the scent of Isha's blood. We can see here the handprint that she left on the floor. And here Vi kicks the door, just like she does on Jace's balcony in Act 1 of Season 1. And here we are seeing what once was Vander's and Silco's hideout, or at least a place in the mines where they work together. I think this is a hideout because this really gives underground rebels energy. This seems like a place where they could hide and plan and strategize without being caught by the enforcers. And this flag and this symbol right here seem to be the symbol of their cause. And here we can see gloves similar to that of Vander's, which makes sense since those are mining equipment, and this takes place in the mines. And we see here Vander's jacket and Silco's, and it's funny how Silco's is much smaller than Vander, and it's even inside of his, obviously hinting at how close their relationship was. And we can see here what's likely the old logo for Piltover, and I don't think the pickaxe right here is part of the logo. I think it's just added on top to symbolize what their profession is, what their role is. And also it makes sense for Piltover's logo, or at least crest, to be different, because we know that the one that is used now is based on the X-Gates. And here's the cup that we saw before, and we can see here that besides Vander's and Silco's jackets, there's another one. This is likely from the mother of the sisters. And here we get the confirmation that indeed Vander and Silco only fought after the incident or the war in the bridge. And it was Vander the one that started it. And it seems that Vander blamed Silco because the war was probably Silco's idea. I think that's the implication here. But he does admit that the dirt was on both of their hands, meaning it wasn't just Silco's idea, or even if it was, Vander agreed to also do it. And the consequences were what we saw in the first episode of Season 1. Once again, we get Blisters and Bedrock, the name of the episode. We are going to understand where this comes from in a bit. And here we see Vi hesitating to comfort Jinx. And here we get this over-the-shoulder shot of Vi, very reminiscent of one of the first ones we saw of Vander, and one of the first ones that we saw of Vi post-time skip in Season 1. And here, I believe Vi was about to say something to Jinx, following what they just found out about Vander and Silco. However, they are going to get interrupted by Vander. And again, we can see that Vander senses blood, but notice the X-Tech. It's also shining. Interesting. Vander is reaching to Isha because she was the one bleeding, but Vi here uses her E ability from League to push him away. And here's Vi's signature uppercut, and look at his hand-drawn blood, so cool. But now we are going to see that he's going to heal from that really fast. Here we can see the skull, but like 3 frames later and he's basically back to normal. And look at these frames right here, so cool. You get this one, and then the skeleton. Oh, so cool. And I believe this is hand animated as well. So freaking cool. And we can see the blood. Oh, so nice. And we can see Vi trying to break his neck. That's funny. Another cool shot. And here we have this transition from Jinx trying to protect Isha to her questioning if she should intervene, because obviously she doesn't want to hurt Vander. And here he recognizes Jinx as Powder, and that causes him to snap back for a second, but then Vi's blood pulls him back to beast mode for a second. And now we get this shot from the trailers and the previews, which was really hinting at a fight between Warwick and Vi, which we did get, but as we'll see, that's not what happens after this shot. And we transition from Vander's eyes to Vi's eyes and back to Vander, except now it's a flashback. Oh, and we actually get the name for their mother here, Felicia. And the song that's playing is the same one from Act 1 of Season 1, when Vi decided to turn herself to the Enforcers, and Powder comes here and Vander offers a drink to Powder. Here we go, we even see the same disc and everything. And here we do get a confirmation that yes, Felicia, the mother of Powder and Violet, was indeed a close friend of Vander and Silco. Same cups from before. And here we can see that she even has a braid, just like Jinx, and Jinx only got the braids after Silco took her, which means that maybe it was Silco who encouraged her to have braids just like her mother. Also, I think it's interesting how there was this relationship between their mother and Vander and Silco, yet we knew nothing about it in Season 1. I wonder why. Like, I don't think we needed this relationship to really appreciate what Vander did for the kids, but I wonder if we had known the relationship between Felicia and Silco, if we would have perceived Silco a little different. Because it's weird that he had this relationship with this woman, yet he was really comfortable in killing Violet. But at the same time, he also did kill Vander, so maybe Silco was really just that far gone at that point. And here, she's talking about how Silco and Vander were able to build a community in the Undercity. This is something that is mentioned by Savika in Act 1 of Season 1. And I really love this moment, because Vander is jokingly saying that their work is done, and we get this line from Silco, very serious, where he says, "You're sadly mistaken," and my immediate thought was, whoa, so Silco was really all about the cause, like that was the only thing he cared about, he was really serious back then. But then he hits you with this line, "No, I'm bozo number one," following the joke from Felicia, which is such a cool moment, such a nice misdirection. Also, we can see some red here in Silco, which I believe comes back in his jacket or coat that he has in Season 1. And I love how when Felicia says that she's pregnant, Vander's first reaction is to take the alcohol away from her and give her a drink. I think this is the same one that he gives to Powder on that episode, where this song is also playing, and this shot right here is also a callback to that episode. I also really like that Silco put his work away, because obviously this is an important moment. And here we get the reveal of the name of Vi's and Jinx's father, Connell, and the way that she says "working up the nerve," like she talks exactly like Jinx. It's so cool. Speaking of Jinx, she has a very similar hairstyle to Silco, right? This part right here. So she almost has a combination of Silco's hair in the front and her mother's hair in the back, which is really cool. And here we get the origin of Bedrock and Blisters. It came from this moment. And this line also shows that yes, this was their dream, their shared dream that Silco mentions in the last episode of Act 1 of Season 1, the Nation of Zon. And here's the origin of Vi's name. It was suggested by Vander. The callback to that one line again, and this was such a nice moment. I don't think anyone was expecting anything like this. I don't think anyone predicted this. Like, such a good moment. Just like Jinx said moments ago, nothing was the same after the day that Vander died, right? So the fact that they are able to reunite with him and have this moment again feels so good. Not only that, but they are together as well. It really is a good moment. And you just know that this is not going to last. Like, even if you don't know about Warwick, like, this is Arcane. It cannot stay like this forever. And also we can see here that he's basically Warwick already. He's just missing the wolf head. And as we'll see, something is definitely going to happen to his head. And we finally return to the X-Gates to learn what happened to Jace, Echo, and Heimer, except we are not going to learn anything. In fact, we don't even know what happened to Echo and Heimer. They do not appear in the second act of the second season. It's crazy. Here we get some cool visuals of the anomaly. Nice. And we see multiple versions of Jace, I think, right? This one right here seems to be more dirty than this one, for example, but it might just be like the lighting. I didn't notice this the first time I watched it, but all of these versions merge into one. Oh, that's cool. That explains why he's sometimes like glitching out. And I like how his hammer like returns to him, like his store or something. And now the gem that saved him and his mother is now melted to his skin. Like, I'm not sure why. I don't know what's going on here. I really wonder what's happening. Here we see the glitches, the same ones from the ending of Act 1, right? Implying that there is still X-Tech in the hammer. And Selu returns. The last time we saw him, he was being told that there was this healer in the Undercity. And obviously, that healer was Victor, and he found Victor, and now he can walk again. But notice that just like all of, I was gonna say victims, but I don't know if that's the right word, all of the people that Victor healed, quote unquote, now we have blue eyes, but they also have these marks right here. These are Victor's fingerprints, because when he touches people to heal them, he usually touches them on their face. And it's interesting that they are fingerprints because I believe that was the term that Echo used in Act 1 to describe the Arcane, and I like how all of these people now also have the same voice filter as Victor. And here we get the first hint that something is either not okay with Chase or not okay with Victor. And we are going to get a couple more throughout this episode and the next one. And I think as the viewers, we are supposed to think that Jace is the one that is being corrupted or manipulated or going through some stuff, because as we'll see, Victor's community is very peaceful. Everything is working out for them. There's no ill intent behind Victor, we know that. But then we are going to see that Jace just absolutely demolishes Salo. And I think the point is for us to think that Jace is crazy. He's gone. He has seen something or something is controlling him. But if I have to be honest, I'm Team Jace on this one. I don't really vibe with cults. If shows and movies and pop culture have taught us anything, is that there's always something wrong going on when it comes to cults. I don't think Victor's cult is any exception. And yes, I do think it is a cult, because they obviously see Victor as a messiah or as like a god of sorts. And I think Jace is the one that is actually seeing the truth here. I think that whatever this is that Jace is seeing, this is what Salo actually is right now, and not what we see him as. I think Jace is onto something here. And later on, when he finally kills Victor, we are going to see that everyone else that Victor touched starts to malfunction or die, basically, which is very suspicious. Another thing I want to mention, and this might be a bit spoilery, is that we've gotten some interesting artworks from both TFT and its Chinese equivalent, Golden Spatula. The first is an image of the X-Gate, and above it we see another version of Piltover. And this shot is very reminiscent of one that we've seen in the trailers, one where there's an open sky directly above the X-Gate, and over on Golden Spatula we've seen an artwork for Chibi Arcane Survivor Jace. And in that artwork, in the reflection, we can see a slightly different Jace and a much different Piltover, one that seems to be corrupted somehow. And this is the same corruption that we also see in that shot from the trailer. We see it on the buildings. So I think there's a couple explanations for that. One, that's just Jace's POV, right? The same way that he's seeing these people as these, I don't know what to describe them, like aliens. He might also be seeing the whole world like that. Second, this might be how the real world is looking right now. We just can't see it yet. Maybe the Arcane has corrupted everything, but it's also like making us see things different somehow, if that makes sense. And the third option is that this is the future. This is what things will look like if the anomaly or the Arcane or something else is not kept in check, or if it's not defeated or something like that. A lot of options here. I believe that there will be a point in Act 3 where a decision is made that is going to have very serious repercussions in the future. And I believe that Echo is going to figure out a way to return to that point and undo that decision. Whatever that decision is, initially it's going to lead to a world or to a Piltover that looks like this, that looks like that artwork. Stony, corrupted, I don't know how to describe it. But that's my theory for now. Very out there, I don't know if it's going to happen or not. So for now, let's continue. Something I forgot to mention here is that we can see that the fingerprints left by Victor are the only thing that is like magical and obviously standing out compared to the rest. And here is what I was saying about glitching. We can see the various Jaces merging into one. And now Victor is using Salo as a telephone, which is funny, but also a sign that there's something fucked up about this cult. Like this is not normal. Also, I like how when Jace realizes that it's Victor, he does not like let go of the weapon, right? He actually grabs it tightly and walks forward. Like this quote right here, like, this is such weird vibes. Here we get a bit of a confirmation that this is still related to Hextech, and we are going to get another one in the next episode. And we also get this line that I know a lot of shippers are going to like, and we see this quote from Victor. If this was on the last act, I would say that this was the start of him renouncing humanity and his emotions, but as we'll see, that only happens at the end of the next episode. And look at these cool frames, and they turn into white silhouettes. That's cool. And somehow Jace is out of that world. I'm guessing that Heimer and Echo are still there. Kinda hard to tell right now. Again, we are still talking about Hextech, somehow. And here, Jace says that Hextech is a curse. Like, this really makes it seem like him and Victor just opened Pandora's box, right? Let all the curses out. This is really what that reminds me of. Also, I just noticed that this right here on Jace's leg is likely to help him walk, right? He must have suffered some kind of injury. It's really interesting that he has an injury on his leg, right? Because so does Victor and even OG Victor as well. Jace here looks very similar to OG Victor, not only because of his left leg, but also because of the shape of his shoulder pad. And this line right here is very reminiscent of when Victor told Jace that he had to destroy the X-Core, and this is reminiscent of when Heimer saw the X-Core. He had a similar quote towards Victor. You two have touched the Arcane. What does that mean? Also, Victor is stealing these things from the X-Gate. I'm guessing these are X-Tech gems. Not sure. The tubes here were also seen in Season 1. I wonder if Jace came back because Salo took them out of the X-Gate or if this is unrelated. Either way, Victor might want these energy sources because, as we'll see, he's running out of energy himself. And then we get these shots right here of Jace completely annihilating Salo with his Q from League, of course. And this was kinda shocking. I think a lot of people were just like, what the hell, Jace? As I said, I'm Team Jace. I think whatever he's doing, he's right. I don't know what that is. Maybe I'll be wrong, but for now, I'm on his side. Oh, and this part right here was from his hammer, right? Pretty sure. And now we move on to the last episode of the new act. And it's cool that it starts with these shots right here, because these are the same from the ending of the episode. And this is going to be one of Victor's last quotes in this episode. Actually, the quote he says later is different. And for some reason, we're getting the quotes that we just saw in the last episode. But I think that when Jace says, I can let you live, this could, obviously, we see it written as live in living a place, but it could also be interpreted as living in life. He can't let him stay alive, right? And we see that his eye starts to turn green and purple, I think, when he dies. He's getting disconnected from the twink hive mind, but it seems that his blood is a different color too. It looks like corrupted by the anomaly. We see all these colors here. Same thing with his eyes. This is likely his blood. And now we see Cosmic God Victor, what the hell? And we see Jace disappearing because, again, Salo is getting disconnected from the hive mind, which makes me wonder, since Victor knows the memories of the people he touched, does it also go both ways? Do they also have his memories? I said a couple minutes ago that I think Jace is the one that is right, but here the show is trying to tell us otherwise. It wants us to believe that Jace is the one that's fucked up and Victor is actually just a peaceful god and he has everything under control. We are being told that there is another will within Jace. Maybe it's true, I don't know, but at the same time, it's showing us Sky, which is another will within Victor, right? He's the only one talks to her, that sees her, which makes me believe that this is not Sky and it's in fact something manipulating Victor. Like, that has to be the twist. While editing, I came up with a better theory. I don't think Sky is evil, but I also don't think this is the real Sky. We know that the X-Core evolves and adapts, and I think after consuming Sky and sensing the impact that her death had on Victor, the X-Core created this version of Sky for him, adapting to give Victor what he wanted. As I mentioned in my last video, this Sky looks slightly different from the one from Season 1, and that might be because Victor never really paid that much attention to her. With this being said, I don't think this Sky will last much longer, but stick around to find out why. Something ancient like a voice. Victor mentions a voice here, and from the Council archives, which were released alongside Season 1, we know that the X crystals produce an otherworldly hum, likely the same one from that scene of Victor at the X-Gate in Season 1. Back then, it was easy to assume that this was tied to the Bracken, as the crystals house their souls, but now that's not canon. Still, I wonder if these hums from the X-crystals are somehow connected to the voice within Jace. And now we see Victor and Sky checking out the anomaly, a singularity simultaneously self-replicating and self-annihilating. Oh, so many people are going to jump on the void theory, I just know it. Flawless, exquisite. Like, is he falling in love with the anomaly? What's going on here? Chaos. So interesting. I can't wait to find out what this is all about. Like, I thought this was going to be a story about the two sisters. I was not expecting any of this, right? I don't think anyone was. And here we are going to get a very nice piece of world building. The people who know the lore already know this, but those that don't are going to learn about it, which are the 3 Noxian principles of strength. Basically, how Noxians define strength, and Noxus is also ruled by 3 people, and each one of them represents one of these core principles. Noxus government, the 3 people are called the Triferics. The first principle of strength is vision, which is represented by Swain in the Triferics. And I like how Ambessa mentions that vision is the principle that Caitlyn dominates the most, which makes sense, she's a detective. Your eyes see what others don't. Then we have Might, which is represented in the Triferics by Darius, and here we see the stones from the League item that I mentioned in the last video. We can see that they used to be on the spear, but he has taken them off. The last is Guile, which is represented in the Triferics by someone that we don't know who it is. It's just simply called the Faceless. Some people think that it might be Ambessa. I'm not sold on that. Some people think it's LeBlanc, but it was confirmed multiple times that it's not LeBlanc. It doesn't make sense to be LeBlanc, so we still don't know who that is. But wouldn't it be interesting if this was Mel's sister? Just a theory with no legs, just throwing stuff out there. We get a better look at the runes, and they are in fact almost the same ones seen in the item's artwork. Oh, and she's mentioning mages here because the effect of the item and the effect of these stones in the show is to nullify magic. We'll see that later in this episode. And Guile is the one principle of strength that Ambessa seems to not really like. She mentions a lack of honor, she mentions a lack of accountability, so it's clear that she is not a big fan of Guile, which is interesting because, as I said, Guile is also sometimes associated with LeBlanc and the Black Rose. And she tells Caitlyn to remember this. Tunnels in your eyes, referencing vision, lava in your veins, referencing might, and shadows in your heart, referencing Guile. And now she's going to mention that she believes in a 4th principle, sacrifice. And she says that sacrifice makes every single other principle stronger. And knowing Ambessa as a character, this makes sense. The things that she had to sacrifice for her to become the woman that she is, and for her family, for her children. This is further explored in her music video, which I also made a video about if you want to check it out. And here, I believe Ambessa is being honest. I believe Ambessa does see Caitlyn as kin. But as we'll see, these feelings are not mutual. And I've also seen some people saying that Caitlyn is the daughter that Ambessa wished she had. I don't know if I would go that far, but I can see that. And after Ambessa telling Caitlyn that she is kin, Rictus looks back. This obviously being the moment where he understood that Ambessa respected and trusted Caitlyn, which is going to become relevant when Caitlyn betrays Ambessa. And here's the first time we see this device that Singed created to locate Warwick. And here Huck recognizes Vi, that makes sense. We saw how he helped Caitlyn help Vi, and how he also betrayed both of them to Silco in the last season. And here it is, Vi also remembers that. And here Isha is going to look at Vi's gauntlets, because she just saw Jinx taking out the gem from her zapper, and she's going to do the same thing to the gauntlets. Notice here on the next scene how she quickly hides them away. I like how he's already being called a herald here. Right? Obviously, he's the machine herald in League. I like how Vi was about to cover Vander, but Huck reassures that it's okay. She doesn't need to. And it's followed by this line, "Come, he's expecting you," which is just so creepy, right? The implication here is that Victor already knew that this was going to happen, which is so sus. Like, why would Victor be expecting them? What does Victor know? Here we see the bell, the same one that we saw destroyed in the last act, and oh my god, it's Jesus. And here Victor taps into Vander's mind, and for a couple seconds he actually sees the man. But that imagery quickly fades as he's turning into the beast. And we get a lot of cool frames here of Warwick's face appearing behind Vander's body and consuming it, basically eating it, and consuming Victor as well, as we see here. These visuals are so cool. And this basically pushes Victor out of Vander's mind. The condition that Victor has, or his powers, have limits, and that this is likely something he cannot fix. Also, I rewinded here because I forgot to mention how different his cane looks. It's getting further and further away from what it used to be. Also, something that I didn't mention in my last video is that we can see a small glow around Victor. It's probably hard to see on YouTube, but if you actually see the show, it's subtle, but it's there. And I don't think I've mentioned this yet, but obviously this is very reminiscent of a hexscape. Much smaller, but we do see the sphere in the middle with these arcs around it, almost exactly like a hexscape. And here we see the fingerprints from Victor, just like we see in everyone that he has healed so far. I like how Victor calls Jinx Powder because she has not told him his name yet. The only information that he has is from Vander's mind, and Vander never knew Jinx. He died when she was still Powder. And we can see that Jinx snaps for a second after hearing Victor call her Powder. And this gear drops out of nowhere. We've seen this gear at the start of this episode as well. I don't know where it came from, but it falls on the water. But I think this gear belonged to Victor, because I think this is the same one from Act 1 of Season 1, from the scene where he and Jace figured out X-Tech, and they are floating in the air and we see like stuff floating around them. I think this is the gear that one of them pushes toward the X-Tech and we see it like get teleported to the other side. So it's cool that he kept it all these years. I was saying that everything Victor knows is from Vander, but he probably also knows Jinx, right? He was the one that deactivated one of her grenades, so he's probably aware of who she is. Even if he doesn't remember her from that moment, he lives in Zon. Like, he definitely knows about Jinx and all the murals and her fans and everything. Because he tapped into Vander's memories, he knows that Powder is her real name, or her first name. And the line is obviously hinting at this progress that Jinx is doing, where she is trying to fix her mistakes and become a better person, in spite of everything that she went through and all the actions that she did. And here Vi actually wants Jinx's opinion on this, something that even herself is surprised by. And it's cool to see that the sisters are getting better. Like, I predicted that they were only going to fight in Act 1, and so far I'm right. I'm pretty sure that in the next act they are going to fully team up against Noxus, but I'll get to that in a bit. And here we see the same plants from Season 1, the same ones from the X-Core experiment. And we see here Vander not accepting the food, and to me this seems like a very normal reaction when you are going through a difficult time or when you've experienced something very traumatic. And look at him, he's so sad. And look what's inside Vander. All of these animals, wolves melting into each other. I wonder if this is also a hint that Singed used multiple animals to make what Vander is now. And I think this imagery of melting, not only is it a reference to that first Warwick cinematic from years ago, but it's also something that we are going to see toward the end of this episode, where his blood is going to basically turn into lava and it's going to burn and melt. So cool. These imageries are so cool. And we can see a lot of the patterns from the Arcane or Anomaly or Victor, whatever. And I wonder if this is because Victor has started to enter Vander's mind quite often and these are the effects of that. Also, he's crying. Like, look at this shot right here. If you went like half a decade in the past and told League players that this was Victor, no one would believe you. Like, he's so different in Arcane. Like, this is so cool. Like, I don't even have words to describe what I'm looking at. I just find it super cool. Obviously here we see an imagery resembling Vander's face, we see the pattern from the Anomaly, we see pillars of lava flowing from the sky, and here we see this wave emanating from the face, which causes Victor to snap back to reality. And here we are going to see a small montage of Victor trying to help Vander. It was day, now it's night, now it's day again. We can see Victor and Sky try to untangle the mess that is Vander's mind. And what is that? Vander. And now we are going to get this very cool montage of some of Vander's memories. So we see him working with Silco here in the mines, and I believe this should be Felicia in the back. I don't know if any of these characters is relevant. One of them might be Felicia's husband, and we see Silco at the last drop. This is almost the same as one of the shots from the last episode, just like this one. And here we see Benzo, and we can see Felicia with Violet, and she's already pregnant with Powder. And here we see the kids. So cool, like such a cool shot, right? We haven't seen them like this since Act 1 of Season 1 in 2021. Right? Oh, it's so cool to see them again. And you can see him training Violet. And he already has a beard right here. So this is post Felicia's death, post war in the bridge. But this isn't, because he doesn't have a beard yet. And we can see Violet exactly like what she looked like at the start of the show, in the flashback at the bridge. And we can see Felicia and her husband arriving from the mines. And it's cool that they are putting the helmet on Powder. This is very reminiscent of what Isha looks like right now, because she always wears a similar hat. And here we see Felicia doing the same peace sign that Powder also does during the fight between Jinx and Echo. And she lets Vi try out the mining glove. And here we see Felicia marking their heights, which is going to transition into this right here. So I was right. This is exactly the same place where Vi took Caitlyn after her fight with Savika. This is the old home of Felicia, Violet, and Powder, run by what? Obviously, Machine Herald is Victor's title in League, so cool reference here. And here we get a closer look at Singe's device that he uses to locate Warwick. We can see that it has blood. I wonder whose blood this is, Singed's or Vander's. Either way, it's interesting that Vander was able to locate Singed just through the scent of the blood. So I wonder if this device right here works in a similar way, but instead of detecting Singed's blood, it detects Vander's. And this right here that the Noxians are transporting is where they plan to imprison Warwick. And here we see that Ambessa is planning to storm the town, regardless of this chat that Singed is having with Victor. I think she already knows that nothing too interesting is going to come out of it. Also, I should say that at this point in Season 2, almost every single protagonist has interacted with every single protagonist. Look at this. Look at this imagery right here. We see all these faces melting together, forming Vander's body. And here's a little Victor right here. There's also Sky. And this quote right here. For the trailers, they placed this quote on the shot where Ambessa is interrogating Singed. It really made it seem like they were making some kind of deal at that point. But no, again, the trailers were really misleading. Your power is finite, diminished by every use. How does he know that? I swear he says this about everyone that comes to visit him. There's no way you were expecting everyone. And here, Singed ignored Victor's personal space, and what happened? Victor just downloaded every single thing he knows. And we see here Oriana, and we should pay attention to the story that Singed is reading to her. His quest led him astray of any trodden path. His own shadow dissolved to darkness. I wonder if that's referencing or foreshadowing something. Either way, here we see a familiar shot. Exactly the same one that we saw from the previous episode, but if you noticed here, this is Singed from Act 1, which means that this takes place in the past. And if you think about it, it makes sense, because he tells Caitlyn that perhaps if things had worked out differently, Caitlyn and Oriana might have been friends. It's not too far-fetched to assume that she was the same age as Caitlyn was in Act 1 of Season 1, right? Now the only course was forward. I assume this story is describing his own life. Yeah, I think this quote right here really fits his life, with the her in question being his daughter. And I wonder if this means anything. I don't recognize this symbol. And here Victor says that knowledge is a paradox. The more that you know that you don't know. And if this is indeed the same gear from when him and Jace discovered X-Tech, he might have seen some parallels between Singed and Jace, because just like Singed is trying to save his daughter, the current condition of Victor also came from Jace trying to save him. The regenerative qualities of his blood will stabilize you. Basically, Singed is saying that Victor can use Warwick somehow to get into a better state. I hope I'm not misinterpreting this, but I think this is connected to one of the last shots from this act. So keep this in mind. And as I said about the last episode, we are getting a reference that this is still about X-Tech. Victor is still about X-Tech, which might seem weird, but we have to keep in mind that this is somewhat robotic, right? Jinx called him a machine herald. So all of this is supposed to kind of look or feel like a machine. I don't really get that much out of it, like maybe from these parts right here, sure. But in universe, this is very machine-like. And it's obviously also magical, so it's still X-Tech. At least that's the implication here. And I think this is supposed to be metal, right? Because when he saved Huck, we saw like bolts and gears getting attracted to him, and when people get cured, their shimmer scars and tumors turn into gold. So that gold has to be like metal transmutated or shaped by Victor somehow to save us from ourselves. These are the first seeds planted into Victor's mind that will eventually change his ideology. And as Singed places his hand on Warwick, we see that he's actually thinking about his daughter. That's what he cares about. That's what he wants to save. That's why he wants Victor to achieve the next form, because he wants Victor to save his daughter. That has to be it. And here Victor is talking about fate. And I think this is interesting because one interpretation from both intros of the show is how they define the fate of the characters, right? In the first intro, every character was made out of stone. Almost like we, the audience, already knew that these characters were going to become like this. Like their path was already set in stone. We already knew that. And in the intro of the new season, we actually see the champions. And we see these beams of light shining on them. And I've seen people say that these beams could be interpreted as the fates of the characters, with the only one that is able to dodge that fate being Echo. Not only can he dodge it, but he can also rewind it. So I think that this line right here is foreshadowing something that is going to happen in Act 3, and I think that everything is going to culminate in the theory that I said before, where Echo is going to go back in time and change something. One specific decision that is going to like leads to everyone being saved or wherever. He said a thing, glorious evolution. I think everyone that knows Victor knows about this, unless you are only familiar with Arcane, but glorious evolution, obviously a callback to Victor's now old lore, where he believed that humanity was a weakness, that emotion was a weakness, and by getting augmented, people could live safer lives, healthier lives, longer lives, without all the pain and suffering and mistakes that could happen and ruin your life and stuff. He called that the glorious evolution. And here Victor says, no, I will not sacrifice Vander's humanity to help you with your daughter. Obviously, he's saying his cause, but ultimately, that's Singed's cause. He might be saying that he wants to better human lives and rid them from death, but what he really wants is to save his own daughter, which is very similar to what Victor was doing by the end of Season 1, right? Yes, Victor wanted to better humanity. Yes, Victor wanted to help and give them better lives, but by the end of the season, he's only trying to stay alive, to keep himself alive. If you perish, this community is soon to follow. Here Singed is talking about how the Noxians are going to raid this place, however this is clearly foreshadowing what's going to happen at the end when Jace kills Victor. And here I wonder if Vi recognized Singed from somewhere. I don't think they've ever met, but she follows him, she sees the pole that Ambessa left behind, she's putting one and one together, and here we see this shot, which is almost the same from her training with Ambessa. Actually, all of Caitlyn's moves are exactly the same that Ambessa does to her in that scene. Vi just called Caitlyn Cupcake and she snapped back to Season 1 for a second, and remember, Caitlyn is really smart. Here, she is basically figuring out by herself that this beast that they are hunting is Vander. You can see in her face, she's putting it all together. As we'll see, Singed sees Victor as a means to help his daughter. However, to do so, he needs Warwick's blood. If Victor fixes Warwick, that likely can't happen. So, while Ambessa wants Victor to not succeed so that she can use Warwick as a weapon, Singed wants Victor to not succeed so that Victor can use Warwick's blood to achieve his full potential and help Oriana. And here, Singed is saying that he might be able to craft a serum to prevent Victor's powers to work on Warwick? How? How does he have this information? It's possible that Singed is lying to Ambessa about the serum, he clearly has motives that don't align with hers, but Singed does want Victor to fail at curing Warwick, so maybe he can do it. And here we have a scene that it's supposed to let us know. Also, I paused on an amazing shot. This scene is supposed to let us think that Caitlyn did not like side with Vi or anything like that. I'm sorry, I didn't believe that for a second. If they were going to show Caitlyn apprehending Vi, they would have showed us that happening, right? But they didn't, so it was obvious that something fishy was going on. And Jace is arriving at the town community. I don't know what to call this. And we get this shot from the trailer. This was indeed Jace and not Victor. And this shot of Caitlyn removing Vi's bag, I wonder if it's reminiscent to a shot from Season 1 when they are in the Firelight's hideout. Theatrics. Obviously, they are just trying to convince Ambessa that they are not on the same side. And here we can see them putting this trap to lure Warwick, and we saw just a shot before that at least a portion of this is blood from Singed. And if this was like an episode ago, this would have awoken Warwick and he would be rampaging right now, but it seemed like whatever Victor is doing is working. And we can see here a bit of that anomaly pattern, I believe, probably a result of Victor's magic. And, well, I guess everyone was right, and this is a bit tropey, but Isha was definitely introduced to give Jinx kind of this perspective on how it feels to be an older sister. At least that seems to be their dynamic at the moment, especially with that quote that Jinx has, "Oh, I never did stuff like this with my sister," while she's doing something with Isha. And here she's basically saying, hey, now that you are in my life, I see things a bit differently. I have a different perspective on things. Sentimental ex-con. This is Caitlyn. Giant Furball, that's Warwick. And the two most wanted are them. And obviously the weird cult is Victor's community. And here she's about to shoot Caitlyn. But that won't happen, as we'll see. Yeah, if it wasn't obvious enough that Ambessa was manipulating Caitlyn, she literally tells us that right here. And the implication here is that she's about to kill Vi. And now Vi is going to talk about trust to Ambessa, which, as I said, this was hinted at in the first scene that we see between Ambessa and Caitlyn in Act 2. Ambessa says that Caitlyn doesn't trust her, and now it comes full circle because who does Caitlyn trust? Vi. And here Ambessa looks at Caitlyn's rifle and she notices that there is no net here. She throws the blade, look at these smear frames, whoa. And here we get the reveal that Vi was working with Caitlyn. To me this was really obvious. And here I love how she punches the net right into Ambessa. No way she saw this coming. And now Caitlyn is like a mile away with a fire cannon ready to one-shot her. And now we are going to get some really interesting visuals with Chase right here. First is this one, very reminiscent of those psychedelic effects that we've seen from the anomaly. I'm guessing that we are going to hear him say this in Act 3, right? This is going to make sense later. And I'm guessing he has to be talking to Heimerdinger and Echo, right? So what if this Jace actually comes from the future and that corrupted Piltover that I mentioned takes place in the future? He, Echo, and Heimer were in this future, but them together figure out a way to go back, but they could have only sent one person and they sent Jace. What if? What if? I'm just saying. That would explain this quote right here. He's telling them, I won't fail. I'm gonna go back in time, fix everything, I'm not going to fail. And what does he do? He kills Victor. So whatever is happening is because of Victor, or whatever is going to happen is because of Victor. And look at this. Like, I just know that the Void theories are going to be wild. I'm not convinced that this is Void, because if this has anything to do with the Void, they might be doing a major retcon to the lore. Not sure, but I think a lot of people see corruption and they immediately jump on the Void train, which is fair. But right now, as we know in the lore, the Void does not corrupt. What the Void does is it consumes reality, it consumes magic, and it adapts itself and evolves based on the things that it consumes. So at worst, this is the Void consuming magic and transforming into this. I don't really know. I think I'd rather wait and see what this is all about, because right now, in my opinion, this doesn't look like anything we've ever seen before. Besides the Void, of course, but well, it's fascinating how he's seeing everyone or having flashes of everyone turning into like these husks. I don't even know how to describe this, these mannequins. Also again, Victor's fingerprints are glowing. And fingerprints was a term used to describe wild runes. And another set of trippy visuals. Like, I really can't blame people for thinking that this is related to the Void, right? Anyway, this seems to be Jace holding his hammer, very reminiscent of the splash art of his new skin. Actually, this seems to be based on his poster, but we can also see something similar in his death animation in League. So maybe he was having visions or flashbacks of his own death. And what is this? Who's this right here? Whose hand is this? Like, Jace is completely losing his mind. They really want us to think that he's wrong, that something is wrong with him. But no, I believe him. I believe him. He's doing the right thing, he has to. And he almost killed a child again. I like how his magic has a very similar effect or texture to that of the anomaly of Victor, but it's at the same time different. Like, the colors seem different and it's much more like fractured. Like, the texture is the same, but it just breaks apart. Here's a better look at what the X-Tech gem inside Jace's hammer looks like now. It makes sense why Victor said that Chase was touched or experienced the Arcane. This looks exactly like the anomaly. And Jace finally finds Victor and he's floating in the air with all these magical wires attached to his back, and these wires are going to appear again. I'm not sure what they mean yet, but I'll talk about them in a second. And this quote right here makes total sense. after Rictus heard the conversation between Ambessa and Caitlyn, where Ambessa told Caitlyn that they were kin. Ambessa trusted and believed in Caitlyn. And here, Rictus uses the runes on his spear to absorb Jinx's magic. Yeah, we see it better right here, with the X-Tech magic being absorbed by the runes. Again, this makes sense considering the item's effect in League. Also, I have to say, I don't really find it that believable that Rictus would lose to Jinx, even with her being augmented by Shimmer. Like, we've seen Chem tanks, we've seen how fast they can move, but Vi and Jace were still able to keep up, so like Jinx should be no issue for this guy, but I guess she had the element of surprise. Also, I didn't mention this, but Jinx saved Caitlyn, which is definitely some character development. Let's go! And here he throws Rictus out the window, and this shot was in the preview for this act, I think, but we didn't see the previous scene. However, people were able to notice that these were the legs from Warwick. That's crazy. Jinx smiles when Caitlyn says you. That's funny. Such a troll. Oh. And Jace's gem is shining? I thought it no longer had magic in it. Such a nice moment, right? Everything was going to work out, let's go. But then Jace just had to do it. Like, I'm telling you, he had to do it. This was the right thing to do. Again, we hear Jace saying that he won't fail. He's also like glitching out. Crazy visuals. Like, damn, what is this? Oh, it's his eye, right? Crazy. And Victor is already expecting that Jace Q, I bet. As Jace is about to shoot, we see various versions of himself, just like when he first returned from the anomaly in the previous episode. And here's a shot from the trailers as well. We finally understand what this place is, who these people are, what this thing is, and what's happening here. I mean, I guess we don't really know what this thing is, but I don't think it's that special. It's just Victor's house, I guess. And we return from the shots from the beginning of the episode. And here we can see that despite looking, well, like this, Jace's hammer can still transform. And where did Jace shot Victor? Exactly in the chest. And if I remember correctly from the first act, this is where the X-Core merged with Victor. The X-Core was in his chest or turned into his chest, and obviously Jace knew that. And if I'm right, and this Sky was created by the X-Core, now that the core was destroyed, Sky is likely gone. So Victor has lost one of the voices inside his head that was helping him navigate all of this. This is likely not the reason for him to go insane, but it sure won't help. And Victor drops the gear, which obviously is here to show us that he died, but the gear also represented this connection between Jace and himself, right? The gear came from the moment where they figured out Hextech. The gear represents the dream that they had together. And now that Victor is offline, everyone is disconnecting. I knew something was wrong with this cult. Like, what do you mean if Victor dies, everybody dies? That does not make sense. Not only that, but they start screaming as well. And remember the magic cables? Well, here they are again, except this time they are coming out of the fingerprints. I was kinda joking when I said that these people were getting disconnected from Victor, but that's kinda what's happening here. Now that Victor is gone, the connection that they had to him has ceased, and now they are also dying. I wonder if Victor knew this. At least Singed implied that he knew, because he said that without him, the community would die. But maybe he didn't mean it so literally. And whatever that was also had an impact on Vander. Here, it might have not been Victor's death that caused Vander to go berserk, because we see this shot of Singed alone in the place where Caitlyn left him unconscious, the same place where Vander also was. And before all of this, Singed was about to inject him with something. Perhaps Vander going berserk was all part of Singed's plans from the start. I wonder if that quote from Ambessa was foreshadowing this, because she tells Caitlyn to not forget, tunnels in your eyes, love in your blood, shadows in your heart, and does this not feel like love in your blood, right? Maybe not so much tunnels in your eyes, and I'm not sure about the shadows in your heart, but the lava is definitely in the blood. Not actual lava, but still. Yeah, I'm not really sure what's happening here, to be honest. But this obviously looks like Vander's psyche, with all the lava and melting imagery. And rip Rictus. The guy got ulted by Warwick. And this right here is the moment when Ambessa realized that Caitlyn betrayed her. And she probably also saw Rictus just getting absolutely destroyed by Warwick. And here's another shot from the trailers. And we again hear the same quote from the beginning of the episode. This quote here is actually different from the one he says at the start. This quote is likely a callback to the one he says when returning to Singed in Season 1. And that's the episode's name. I'm not sure what he means by this. The term pattern is likely a callback to the scene where Jace explains the wild runes to Echo. He says that Victor described the wild runes as patterns that occurred naturally where the border between their world and the Arcane was thin. The reason for our failures in the commune. The doctor was right. Humanity. And now we are getting to, I'm not going to say the Victor that we know from the old lore, but at least a similar point of view where he understands that humanity, emotion, our flaws are holding us back. Our very essence, our emotions, rage. And we see Ambessa mourning the death of Rictus, which I think wouldn't have hit as hard if we didn't get that one shot of her opening up emotionally to him, talking about her daughter. Compassion and hate, two sides of the same coin, inextricably bound. And here, Vander is getting attacked from all sides from the Noxians, and he just swatted Jinx aside. I want to believe that he was actually trying to protect her here. And now, as Isha is about to sacrifice herself, we can see a montage of her and Jinx. Here they are dancing in the hideout, just laying around. Here she is looking at Jinx's hair, probably when she also started to want to have blue hair. Here's them painting the bugs, the same ones from the bug fight. Here's her getting her hair painted blue, and the braid as well. And I think this montage is here for us to understand how Isha saw Jinx. She saw Jinx as a hero. She saw Jinx as her source of hope. And here Isha puts the gems that she stole from Vi's gauntlets inside Jinx's zapper. This whole scene is probably a callback to the ending of Act 1 from Season 1, right? The multiple crystals, the fact that it's a small blue-haired girl, and the fact that Vander is going to explode. And now that Isha sacrificed herself, maybe Jinx understands a little better why Violet didn't want Powder to go on their mission to save Vander. She didn't want her to die. But I don't understand, what's her plan? Like, this is definitely not going to save Vander in any way. So, is her plan to just kill herself and all the Noxians? Is that it? Like, we see that she pulled the trigger right on Vander's face, and this caused a huge explosion. Maybe even bigger than the one from Season 1. That which inspires us to our greatest good is also the cause of our greatest evil. But yeah, it seems that everyone was right and this kid is really going to die. I think the real plot twist would be if the kids didn't die, right? However, this weapon right here, Jinx's weapon, remember I said it's sort of like a taser, it's a non-lethal weapon. So maybe, and this is very unlikely, they didn't die, they just got electrocuted, maybe? I doubt it. I do think that this was like an actual explosion and that everyone died. Obviously the signature finger gun from Jinx, and she shoots directly at Vander's head. And if we compare Vander's design to Warwick, he's pretty much already there. The only thing that's missing is the wolf face. So I wonder if after the explosion, his head is going to regrow as a wolf, or if Singed is going to intervene even more. And now, let's check out the preview for the next act. You should stop watching now if you don't want any spoilers. Thank you so much for watching this far. And we get this quote from Jace, "A storm is coming." And he says this while we are seeing these Noxian soldiers marching to Piltover, the likes of which Piltover has never faced. Obviously, they want us to believe that the storm is the Noxians, and whoa, these are some very scary Noxians with Shimmer right here, but I don't think that's the case. I think the storm that he's mentioning is that weird corruption that we see in the buildings. Also, interesting that he uses the term storm, considering the name of Victor's ultimate in League, and in the last episode, Victor uses the word chaos when describing the anomaly. So we have chaos and storm, and here we see the gang together, Vi, Caitlyn, Mel, and Jace. I can't wait to find out how they all meet together. In the preview, we'll see Jace, Caitlyn, and Vi wearing this black armor. Victor is at the center of all of this. So this is still old Jace, right? So I wonder if this aligns with the theory of him going back in time. Maybe not, but who knows? Maybe this is not the Jace that we just saw. Maybe the Jace that we saw is the future of this Jace right here, and not the other way around. And I mean by this is the Jace that is going to go back in time. Oh wait, we do see Singed working on Warwick again. So this is when he's going to get the wolf face, definitely. And this is Victor. We can see here the purple body that he has, and he has the same magical cables. Singed managed to get a hold of Warwick, he also managed to get Victor. We are switching from this to this shot right here of Singed, and then again to Victor, and now to this very interesting one, which again goes back to Victor. So I wonder what this is, this yellow blood? This is definitely where Victor was, right? Singed is definitely keeping Victor here, 100%. As Singed and Sky said, Victor's power is finite, and he is running out of it. Singed explained that Vander's blood has regenerative qualities, and that Victor could stabilize himself using it, at the cost of Vander's life of course. And following Victor's apparent death, this is likely what Singed is going to do, a blood transfusion from Vander to Victor. And if you remember the tarot cards from Season 1, we saw that after death came the Magician, the latter obviously being Machine Herald Victor with the third arm and everything. So after Victor's apparent death and the blood transfusion, Victor is going to become the Machine Herald material that we know. I've mentioned before how in the old lore, death was the catalyst for Warwick's full transformation, so it's possible that he really died after the explosion, or that he is going to die after the blood transfusion. It's also possible that Victor will have something to do with Warwick's transformation, but I'm not sure. Either way, death is something really important in both of their paths, as they've both died once and they're likely both dying again. Also, it might be because of Victor that Oriana turns into a full machine, but I'm also not sure yet. If death really is the catalyst necessary for Warwick's and Victor's full transformation, maybe this also applies for Oriana. But since Singed was all about keeping the subjects alive, he would never find this out on his own. This might be the same liquid he pours into his daughter's chamber. In an LA event themed around Arcane, they had 3 special drinks, one themed after Shimmer, another themed after Chemtech, and one with a similar gold color. So this is definitely going to be relevant in the next act. This might also be the same liquid we see him putting on the device before he injects it into Warwick, causing him to go berserk. And the connections again? These guys are waking up. The Arcane is waking up, hold on. And then we see the Noxians blasting Piltover buildings. And here we see Caitlyn's POV as she fights Ambessa, and the fight continues. This makes sense, like these characters had a close relationship in Season 2. It makes sense for them to have a final confrontation. And here we see Caitlyn and Vi in the same outfit from that underground council. And here we see Caitlyn's railgun, the same one from her new skin. And right here is Maddie. And here we see Vi. I believe she has longer hair now, and these gauntlets are definitely new. And she's fighting one of the Shimmer Noxians. And right here we can see the crest of the Talis family. So where does this take place? Maybe in Jace's forge. And right here we have Jinx's hideout, now flying. We've seen this in the trailers, and I believe we've seen this shot somewhere. I remember it. If you notice right here, this really looks like a mouth. And whose mouth? Well, obviously Warwick's. But this looks like the same gold blood from Cincha's experiment on Victor that we just saw. But the glass goes back, right? Almost like the scene when they figured out Hextech for the first time. I wonder what this means. Maybe somebody is rewinding time, and we see here the window that broke, I'm assuming. And what is this? We see some banners burning. We can see here Silco's logo, but I can't really see what's underneath it. These are probably the banners of the Noxians and or Enforcers, and also notice how the X on her chest is missing. I'm curious to see what Jinx's role is going to be, because based on the trailers and based on Vi's new skin, we know that she's going to help somehow. We've seen Echo with her paint, we've seen Vi with her gauntlets fixed by Jinx, so she's going to help somehow. And we also saw the flying hideout, right? So I'm wondering how all of that is going to work out, considering that Caitlyn doesn't really like Jinx, considering that Jace probably also doesn't like Jinx, right? If you come, use all that explosive potential of yours for good, maybe we could rewrite your story. Obviously, the implication is that Vi is trying to convince Jinx to join them against Noxus, but I wonder if there's more to it than that. If this isn't actually about the Noxians, if this is about something else that's also happening. Let's take a look at these visuals, because I don't really know what they represent. We go from an Hextech gem to Jinx's hair, now free from her braids. Oh, and it seems that Caitlyn is weaponizing the Grey against the Noxians. Okay. Oh, look at this impact frame. We can even see her eyes. Cool. And the Noxians are using crossbows? Okay. And I'm guessing Caitlyn has Collector, because this guy died with one hit. And what is this? I think this is the same device from a couple of scenes ago, and the same one that we also see in one of the trailers, but I'm not sure. But like, this guy literally cooked. Oh, and what is that? Jinx's minigun and her hideout and Clagger's doll right here. And that's it. That's the preview. They are really focusing on this war between our protagonists and Noxus, right? We saw a lot of that. What we didn't see was Victor, which is interesting because he definitely has a major role in this last arc. That just makes sense. They've also not shown Echo or Heimerdinger, but we've seen Echo in the trailers, as I've mentioned, including a shot where he has a Piltover outfit, and we still don't really know how that fits into the story. But 2 more details that might be hinting at something to come from TFT. The first is Caitlyn's ability in the game, which is an airstrike, and in her chibi artwork we also see some airships above her, definitely hinting that she's going to use some kind of airstrike against the Noxians. The finisher of her chibi also shows an interesting scene of her shooting her enemy. I assume that's going to be based on a scene from Act 3. I think they used Echo to promote that finisher, so maybe it's related to Echo. somehow. Another detail to mention from TFT is one of the new items, which seems to be hinting at something like alternate dimensions. I've mentioned this before, but this might be another hint toward that. But yeah, that's it for now. For the next act, I'm expecting the major conflict to not be with Noxus, or at least to be with Noxus at first, but then transitioning into something else, maybe related to Victor. Not saying that he's going to be the main villain, but I also wouldn't be surprised if that was the case. I believe we are going to see more from Mel, finally understanding what her power is, and we are going to see it in action. I think Echo is finally going to figure out the Z-Drive, and obviously that is going to be really important in the story. I think Ambessa is going to die. I think that Vi and Jinx will finally have a healthier relationship. They will still go their separate paths. They won't stay together, but at least they will be on better terms, like they are now. I assume that Caitlyn is going to remain as the sheriff. I don't really know what's going to happen to Jace, while Victor has to become the Machine Herald. I think that's obvious. And I really think that at the end of Season 3, there's going to be a small teaser or hint toward what's to come. And for now, I believe that's going to be Noxian related, but we'll see. Oh, and I don't know what's going to happen to Oriana. I don't think Shinji is going to die, but I also don't believe that Oriana is going to be a robot at the end of this season. I think we might get a hint toward that, but the full transformation is going to happen after the events of this season in terms of timeline. But yeah, that's it for me for now. I know that I missed a lot of details, so let me know about them down below. If you liked this video, consider liking and leaving a comment, and if you haven't already, subscribing as well. It's free and you can always change your mind later. With this being said, I'll see you guys in the next one.